Dear students, welcome to International Business course video series. The fifth episode of the video series is about International Human Resource Management. You had a course on Human Resource Management, but in this chapter we are going to look at Human Resource Management from an international perspective. And it is more complicated from the domestic business human resources management activities. So in this chapter we are going to cover the human resources management functions from an international perspective. At the end of this chapter you will be able to define international human resource management and the factors driving its complexity, and distinguish the different approaches to staffing at multinational enterprises. Explain how multinational enterprises employees are trained and developed, understand international performance management and appraisal and the challenges it faces. You will be able to describe the international compensation package and its components, and identify the approaches to international labor relations at the end of the course. So let's start with this introduction. So economic transactions between countries have been observed since ancient times, but in order to have better productivity and performance levels, most of today's companies carry out international operations, which consist of complex activities. For the success of international operations, the management of human resources is vital and is one of the most critical success factors for international companies. Accordingly, this chapter is about human resources activities at the international level. So first we need to highlight the term called expats or expatriates, and why we have international businesses and why we should care about international businesses, why international business should care about these expatriates. Is international human resource management more complicated than managing HR locally? So, and the next question will be, what is international human resources management? So there are many professional employees who are called expats or expatriates working in a country other than their own. So anyone who work in a country other than their own is called expatriates. With their increasing number and various motivations and needs, it's one of the most critical tasks for international companies to manage these human resources, as well as others who are local nationals of the country or other countries in which the company has its operations. So you have different group of people working in the same organization setting, and it's not easy to manage human resources because employees can come from different educational backgrounds, different occupations, different motivations, different gender identities, ages, and other various demographic and occupational features. So diversity is an issue, and in terms of international human resource management, it is an important issue. So on the top of this, as firms go global, finding, managing, and retaining human resources became especially challenging because all of those activities become more complicated within the actual reality of different national cultures and ways of doing business in those cultures. Therefore, we need to define and understand international human resource management if we are to understand the business done in international level. So without having a thorough understanding of human resource management, then we won't be able to understand or make sense of what international business management is. And international human resource management is about planning, recruiting and selecting and training, developing, evaluating and retaining employees for the international operations of international companies. So in the upcoming slides we are going to have a look at these functions of international human resources management in a detail. So why is it complicated? The definition of international human resource management seems to be straightforward, but why is it complicated? International HRM is usually more complicated than domestic human resources management. In order to understand the complexity, we need to understand its three dimensions. Please look at the figure 5.1 from your textbook. As demonstrated in this figure, the dimension of international HRM are activity dimension, regional dimension, and employee group dimension. So it's a three dimension making it more complicated. International HRM consists of different activities, So, for example, recruitment, selection, training, development, performance appraisal, compensation, labor relations, and leadership, which form the first dimension. The second dimension is related to the regional aspect, which includes whether HRM is carried out in home country, host country, or other countries. And the third dimension is concerned with different employee groups. For example, home country national, host country national, or from other countries, or we can call them third country nationals. And it's complicated because based on these dimensions, because complexity of international HRM can be related to the factors, as you can see in here, it adds new HR responsibilities, and there's a need for international broader perspective in terms of compensation, the greater involvement in the personal lives of employees if you are sending or receiving people from different countries. Managing the foreign local mix, foreigner and local mix is an important issue, and the risk is high, higher than at least from local human resource management, and external influences on government and cultures are more strong or strongly felt in international human resources management. So where can you find or recruit the employees? You can you should understand the staffing at an international level, and we have different approaches for staffing at different levels. Employees can come from three sources. They can come from a parent country or a home country. They can come from a host country or a third country, depending on where the organization headquarters is. A parent country is a country in which the company's corporate headquarters is located. A host country is a country in which the parent country organization seeks to or has already located a facility. A third country is a country other than the host country or the parent country, and the company in question may or may not have a facility there. Then, based on the above classification, employees are categorized as parent country nationals, host country nationals, and third country nationals. So parent country nationals are employees who were born and live in parent country. Host country nationals are those employees who were born and raised in the host country, and the third country nationals are employees who were born in a country other than the parent and host country but work in these organizations in the host country. The approaches, we have four different approaches in filling positions in the human resources management at multinational enterprises. Each category of employees has its advantages and disadvantages. The preference for one category over the other is determined by the approach to human resources management at international organization. Four global strategies are ethnocentric, polycentric, geocentric, and regiocentric approaches. A multinational enterprise is said to be following an ethnocentric approach when strategic decisions are made at the headquarters and critical positions in both in the domestic and foreign operations of the multinational enterprises are filled by personnel from the parent country by parent country national with no or minimal autonomy delegated to the foreign subsidiaries. This is what ethnocentric approach is in international HRM. When an multinational enterprise treats each subsidiary as a distant national entity, it is said to be adopting a polycentric approach. This is like a decentralized organization. While the polycentric attitude strives for optimal local solutions, this might be suboptimal for the whole organization because multinational enterprises which think more globally in terms of their operation recognize that each part makes a unique contribution with unique competence are said to pursue a geocentric or to staffing. The regiocentric approach is a mix between polycentric and geocentric approaches with assumption that within regions is more comfortable than between regions. So within region is more comfortable than between regions. The multinational enterprise divides its operations into geographic regions and moves staff within particular region. For example, Europe, America, Asia, and rather than between regions. So for example, countries from Middle East are staffed with managers from Middle Eastern countries, but not necessarily from the same country. These are the four approaches for staffing at international organization. And training and development for employees in international assignment. The questions that we need to highlight is where does the employee come from first, and then training and developing the home or parent country nationals, training and developing the host country nationals, then training and developing the third country nationals will be different in international training and development function in the organization. So cultural training and the level of cultural training will be different for each of them. After the employees are hired a multinational enterprise by the multinational enterprises, the skills and knowledge that they have and those that they need in order to perform their duties have to be identified. Those who lack the necessary skills or knowledge can then be directed into specific training and alternatively into development programs. The training and development managers and other key multinational enterprise employees vary to some extent depending on whether the candidate is from where, in which country, what part, is it a home, host, or third country national. If a company is less likely to send host country nationals abroad, then before going abroad, the company will frequently encourage the parent country nationals to study the language and culture of the country to which they may go. Before embarking on their expat assignment, the parent country nations may be sent on short trips abroad to handle assignments and to look around what's going on and to be exposed to foreign surroundings. The training and development activities undertaken for host country nationals will differ from those used for home country nationals. In the host country nations are more likely to lack the knowledge of the company as a whole and the knowledge of advanced business techniques, particularly those that are specific to business operations of the multinational enterprises. As a result, training programs will need to be developed to enable host country nations to understand and perform effectively within the multinational enterprise. Hiring employees who are citizens of neither the home country nor the host country is often advantageous. Third country nationals may accept lower wages and benefit than will employees from home country, and they may come from culture similar to that of a host country. Also, they may have worked for another unit of the multinational enterprise and thus be familiar with the company's policies, procedures, and people. This approach can simplify the training and development requirements for such recruits. The use of third country national has become particularly prevalent in developing countries because of shortages of literate, skilled local employees. With the belief that understanding a host country's culture will help the employee empathize with that culture and enhance his or her effectiveness in dealing with host country nationals, the major part of training and development programs will include cultural training. The next function that we are going to look is performance management and performance appraisal in the international setting. In the international performance management and performance appraisal, the performance of expatriates is likely to be related not only to the international operations of the multinational enterprise, but also to the headquarters, which impacts the entire organization. So moreover, there is of course being unable or unwilling to sometimes expatriates couldn't perform the task or objectives determined by the parent company. This situation, which explained the expatriate return to home country before the completed assignment period, is defined as expatriate failure. So early returning to the home country is called expatriate failure, or unexpected repatriation we can also call. The rates of expatriate failure is very high, and the amount of cost is also very high. In a similar vein, international performance management is defined as a designed, implemented, and evaluated intervention of an multinational enterprise to the purpose of managing the performance of its global workforce, so that performance at the individual, team, and organization level contributes to the attainment of strategic global objectives and the results in overall multinational desired performance. So these are the topics that you are going to read in the international performance management and appraisal section of this chapter. And money, compensation, international compensation, components of the international compensation package, and approaches to international compensation management are the issues that is covered in part of this chapter. employee compensation is defined as all forms of pay going to employees that arise from their employment. Compensation has two main components. These are direct financial payments and indirect financial payments. Direct financial payments include wages, salaries, incentives, commissions, bonuses, whereas indirect financial payments include financial benefits like employer-paid insurance. International compensation is defined as the provision of monetary and non-monetary rewards, including base salary, benefits, prerequisites, long and short-term incentives valued by employees based on their relative contribution to multinational enterprises' performance. For expatriate positions, salary should be satisfactory enough to move to another company. For expatriate, base salary is the primary component of the package of allowances, many of which are directly related to base salary, and allowances are the basis for in-service benefits and pension contribution. Foreign service premiums, hardship premium, mobility premium, cost of living allowances, housing allowance, education allowances, relocation allowances, spouse assistance are forms of allowances that paid to expat part of the international compensation package. In general, multinational enterprises use different approaches for compensating their employees, and two main approaches to international compensation are going rate approach and the balance sheet approach, which you can read the detail in the chapter as well. And the last, the industrial relations. Apart from integrating various dimensions within national industrial relations systems, industrial relations at the international level is much more complicated. Why? Because industrial relations at in that level, due to this, we have international labor relations. Multinational enterprises may prefer either centralized or decentralized their approaches, or mix centralization and decentralization based on their needs. So labor unions, which provide the means for collective bargaining, are one of the important actors to be considered for international labor relations. So it's complicated. In human resource management and labor relations are complicated in a domestic market for the domestic settings, and when you add more variables, it becomes even more complicated. So that was the end of chapter 5. You can access more learning material from Anadolu University's learning management system called E-Kampüs. Don't forget to read the chapter from your textbook. Your responsibility for the exam is from the textbook. Good luck with your studies.